Susan Bernstein, and I'm originally from northern New Jersey, and spent my early years dreaming of Manhattan. Lived in Fort Lee, Manhattan for years. Moved to Aspen in the 70s when I didn't know what it was. I was a city kid. And then I moved back to New York, and I'm here honoring my beloved brother, who is my best friend in the world, Ivan Bernstein, who, when he called me the week that he found out he was HIV positive in 1988, was still a death sentence. And within a week, no exaggeration, I had quit my job and moved to Orlando, Florida, where he his company in Hollywood had sent him there to oversee the opening of the post-production facility, which became the backstage tour at Disney MGM. When I first got down there, he hadn't accepted it, I don't think. He was terrified. And he said, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to think about it. It was in his garage when I first got there, a week after he told me. I moved from New York in a week to Orlando, where he was working. And he said, I don't want to suffer, and you're the only one that really knows what that means. So you know what I'm asking you. And I said, I don't have to think about it, absolutely. And I think that gave him some peace. He was with a company called the Post Group, which was huge. He did all the post for everything in the 80s. And his boss loved him, and he was in a kind of fatal attraction relationship in LA. And his boss knew he had to get out of Dodge, and he had this project looming, needed somebody to go down and oversee everything and be the general manager of the facility. And Ivan, he knew, was up to the challenge. He's very, very, not because he was my brother, but he was really, really, really smart. He started in production with Broadway Video in New York. He worked for Saturday Night Live. His first job was actually getting all of the props in the early years. And he was always very political. It was the time of Reagan, who was the Antichrist as far as he was concerned. He was always political. My parents sent him to golf camp when he was 15. He was like, rocking a Jufro and was already on Nixon's enemy list because of the publications he was subscribed to. And they sent him to golf camp, where he got thrown out because he started a demonstration. And so that was always something he was very passionate about. Being gay and losing, he was losing his loved ones, like everybody else in the 80s. They were dropping like flies, and Ivan was pissed. He was pissed and was passionate. And Larry Kramer was probably his hero, and Milk, and all the rest of them. And when he found out he was HIV, I immediately, like I said, moved to Orlando, which in those days was, redneck territory. Disney was a smokescreen. And 3 months later, he moved to South Beach. He said, I can't deal with the Disney suits, and I don't know how much longer I have, and I need to make a difference. I need to do something. At the very beginning, he found that they didn't have an ACT UP, and they didn't have any kind of movements. They were totally in denial. There was one in Fort Lauderdale had a chapter, obviously all the big cities did. And South Beach, where they had a huge gay community, were still with their heads in the sand, and it really made him crazy. He had to do something. And he met ELINOR BURKETT, who at the time was the AIDS reporter for the Miami Herald. She was up for a Pulitzer, as a matter of fact, in '91 for one of her articles. Very well-known journalist, good friends with Kramer, and introduced him to people like PEDRO ZAMORA, who, when he was 16, he sought out ELINOR because he wanted to educate, and he wanted ELINOR to write, an article about him so he can, educate people. So Ivan was, one of the beginning members of Body Positive. He personally started ACT UP. One of his very best friends, who he loved so much, Miguel, was also a very passionate activist, and the two of them, they tried so hard to get the bathhouses closed. That was a mission. And he, also worked for the Gay Men's Health Network, and they were working at that point with the CDC, demographic, let's say, of young gays who 15 to 20, early 20s, 20-something, who, would never get tested, who, were usually homeless and, turned tricks in parks and would never come in and get tested. And the CDC were profiling them. And Ivan and his, compatriots would take a big Winnebago to the parks, to where the kids were. And they related to him, and he would get them in and profile them, but test them, and then follow up, and stay in contact with them. When he decided that before he died, he needed to leave something meaningful. And I believe that's when the acceptance started. When he died, I had called Ellie because she knew the medicine and she knew everybody. She had contacts that I didn't have. And it was over the Millennium weekend, try to get one. His doctor was away. It was a skeleton crew in the hospital. And I slept there every night. I stayed there with him. It happened quickly. It turned out that someone once said, the thing that you fear the most is what you will die from. And he was a communicator. He was an activist. And he was very brilliant. And he was most afraid of, the brain, something happening to his brain. And he died of AIDS-related lymphoma of the brain, which the last year he was alive, his doctor basically said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The quilt was made for me by his friend of ours, both of ours, who was there when he died. We brought him home, and he took his ashes, because we knew his favorite place in the world was the top of Old Clump Mountain in upstate New York, where ELINOR BURKETT and her husband Dennis built a house on top. And Dennis was an artist, and he built a commemorative rock, sculpture, which it was a huge 6-foot rock that had a ledge where I could leave a letter, and made a circle, benches, and you can kind of sit there and talk to him. But that's where we spread his ashes. Ellie said cottage. It was some closure. It wasn't really closure. I don't really understand that. This is closure for me.